The US military says it's conducting fresh strikes on Iran, just hours after President Trump said that a ceasefire with Iran was over. It said the strikes were aimed at degrading Iran's ability to threaten the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Earlier, Mr. Trump labelled the leadership in Tehran sick and scum and declared talks between the two countries were a waste of time. Last night, the US struck over 80 Iranian targets, including the southern port city of Bandar Abbas, after 3 oil tankers were attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran retaliated, hitting a number of US military bases across the region, including in Bahrain and Kuwait. Jeremy Bowen has the latest.
This was Bandar Abbas, under attack by the Americans last night. It's the Iranian port that overlooks the Strait of Hormuz. It is a serious escalation, with Iran hitting back with its own attacks on US bases, all driven by the Iranian regime's determination to retain its capacity to choke the global economy by controlling the strait, and by Donald Trump's reluctance to hand Iran a strategic victory after a disastrous war.
I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to her.
President Trump was speaking at the NATO summit in Turkey. He's referring to talks with Iran, which continue, but are, one source said, now very tense. It won't be his last word on the subject. In free-ranging diplomacy, he also has coveted Greenland, ripped into European allies, but gave Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky a major boost, agreeing that the Ukrainians can build Patriot interceptor missiles.
Now initiative moved to our hands, not totally, but moved. We are trying to move this war to the sky from the battlefield. That's why we now begin to control the battlefield.
The US used so many Patriot missiles during the war with Iran that its own stocks are low. President Zelensky has asked repeatedly for US permission to build Ukraine's own under license. Ukraine needs them to intercept Russian ballistic missiles. Kyiv was once again under attack last night. It is a big US concession to Ukraine and a move away from Donald Trump's affinity with Russia's President Putin. But President Trump's scattergun diplomacy has not brought the wars in Ukraine and in Iran anywhere close to resolution or even a secure ceasefire. The multi-day funeral for Iran's late supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has crossed the border into Iraq, with tens of thousands of Iraqi supporters of the Tehran regime mourning in Najaf, an Iraqi city holy to Shia Muslims, who are the majority in both countries. The US and Israel killed the Ayatollah on the first day of the war, believing his death would precipitate the fall of the regime. Instead, his funeral has become a symbol of the regime surviving its worst nightmare, a joint attack by the Americans and the Israelis. The Americans have released this Top Gun-style video of their Navy in the Arabian Sea. As their president promised, they've hit Iran again tonight. But America has come up against the limits of its military power. It has not broken the will of the regime in Tehran. And it's hard to see how more strikes can do that where all the others did not.
And Jeremy is with me. And to that point, Jeremy, the situation looks bleak tonight, but what can the US achieve with restarting these hostilities?
I'm not sure they can achieve anything more apart from breaking more things in Iran. They've demonstrated massively that they can do that. So the question is, how do they reverse out of all of this, and how does the world actually deal with this big issue about the Strait of Hormuz? It's got to be diplomacy, surely. It's got to be the talks. Now, sources from within the sort of the mediation process there are saying that while neither side is walking away from the talks, Iran or the US, there's a lot of heavy lifting necessary to try to get them talking again. I think that they're probably at a point now where it's pretty stalemated. And what we may well continue to see are these escalations and upsurges without going back to full-on war. Donald Trump, before he left Turkey, was asked, does this mean the war's on again? And actually he said, well, no, it doesn't. But then they've gone ahead with these strikes, which he was threatening as well. In fact, it was a pretty classic day of Trumpian diplomacy. Different kinds of messages swirling around the place with President Zelensky in Ukraine. That bid by him to make Ukraine's own Patriot missiles has been top of his shopping list for ages, and he's got it. And don't forget, last year he had this huge row with Trump, of course, in the Oval Office, when Trump said, you've got no cards. But now Donald Trump has gone from saying, about a month ago, that he was dealing with very reasonable, decent people in Iran, to saying that they're scum, and then pulling back a little bit. So I think we're going to be continuing to see these oscillations. This is not over, and it's not going to end anytime soon.
Jeremy, thank you. Jeremy Bowen there.